name is Vic van Buren, and I'll be MC this morning in the proceedings. A hearty welcome to all of you, and we hope that you're going to enjoy this presentation and feedback on the PAGE program, which is the Partnership for Action on the Green Economy, and the event is on inclusive and sustainable economies, powering the Sustainable Development Goals. This morning's proceedings will be as follows. We will hear from the ILO Director General, Mr. Guy Ryder. We'll then have a presentation from Mr. Steve Stone, who's on the podium with us, and welcome, Steve. And then we will have statements from the rest of the panelists on the podium, and I'll introduce each panelist prior to them being introduced. We also need to recognize Mr. Stephen Sekaz and Mr. Tim Caston from our other UN agencies in front. I think we need to get the show on the road, and without any further ado, I'm going to hand over for the opening remarks to Mr. Guy Ryder, the Director General of the ILO.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Vic, and welcome to everybody. It's wonderful to see such a full room this morning. Particular warm welcomes to my colleagues here at the top table. Executive Director Selwyn, great pleasure to welcome you to the ILO. And Executive Director Seth of UNITAR is equally so. Ambassador, and to say thank you very much for accompanying us. Councillor Mbele also from South Africa. We're delighted to have you all here, and Steve will be hearing from you a little bit later on. Let me then recall that this is the sixth dialogue of this type that we've organised here at the ILO around issues of environment and climate change. Of course, from an ILO perspective, we're looking at these issues from a world of work point of view. We're very pleased that this event is convened under the Partnership for Action on Green Economy, PAGE, which, as you know, I think is a joint programme bringing together 5 UN agencies, UNEP, of course, the ILO, UNDP, UNIDO, and UNITAR. And this time our event is also organised in cooperation with the Geneva Environment Network, a partnership of over 75 environment and sustainable development organisations based in this area of Geneva, and we're very welcome to be working with them this morning. Colleagues, PAGE is a collective response to the call made of the Rio Plus 20 in the Rio Plus 20 outcome document, The Future We Want, adopted back in 2012. It was the call made on the UN system and development partners to deliver support to countries pursuing environmentally sustainable and socially inclusive green economies. And I take the opportunity to renew the ILO's commitment to the current PAGE countries and to express particular appreciation to our funding partners for PAGE for the trust and the commitment they put into the programme. I think that the complementary mandates of the UN agencies involved and their combined expertise and networks makes it possible to offer integrated, holistic support to countries, and in doing so ensure coherence and avoid duplication. The ILO is engaged in PAGE as a founding member since the beginning, 2012, and we think that we can bring to the partnership our unique features, that's tripartism, that's employers and workers working together, and we bring also our mandate and expertise on labour and social dimensions of the transition, just transition, to greener economies. For the ILO, the greening of economies can and must be a strong driver for decent work, sustainability and job creation. Because without positive employment results, the readiness of governments to embark on profound structural transformation risks being limited, particularly at times of high unemployment in many parts of the world. So, in our view, the shift to a low-carbon and climate-resilient economy has to be inclusive, addressing the consequences of restructuring labour markets and ensuring the full engagement not just of governments, but also of workers and employers' organisations. Now, I think that we all have a fairly good understanding that greening economies will impact labour markets in many different ways depending on national contexts. But broadly speaking, new jobs will be created, some other jobs will be substituted, and others will be displaced without substitution. We have to take all of these realities and parameters We are taking the agenda a step forward through our so-called Green Centenary Initiative, which is 2 years away from the ILO's centenary, which forms part of 7 initiatives that the ILO will be implementing with a view to 2019. The intention of the Green Initiative is to provide a step change in the work of the ILO, to integrate environmental sustainability in all areas of our work, while infusing equally a decent work dimension into the environmental agenda. And the Green Initiative will be the theme of my own report, to be debated by the ILO conference, meets annually in June in a few weeks' time. Ambassador, executives, directors, ladies and gentlemen, with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the adoption of the Paris Agreement on climate change, I think the international community has defined clear goals and targets to advance the economic, social and environmental dimensions of sustainable development. And it's also placed very clear responsibilities on the multilateral system and for different parts of that system to work closely together. As a country-driven programme, PAGE can, we hope, offer a meaningful contribution to deliver on urgent and essential demands of people and communities from all over the world to live in a safe environment, have access to decent work opportunities, and to realise their aspirations. So that's how I would like to position the ILO at this meeting, and Vic, with that I'll hand it back to you to carry the process.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder. I now wish to hand over the floor to Mr. Steve Stone, the Chief of the Economics and Trade Branch, UN Environment. Steve.
Thank you very much, Vic, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, Executive Secretaries. Thank you very much for this opportunity to say a little bit more about the PAGE story to share with you this morning. And Mr. Guy Ryder, your remarks about the community, I think, are very apropos, because if anything, PAGE is a community of practice around the economics of sustainability. So in other words, how do we create prosperity? How do we create improved economic performance without jeopardizing the very base of our prosperity, which is the environment and our endowments of natural resources? That is the raison d'etre of PAGE. And in a way, these challenges are so large and so complex that we simply couldn't do it alone. So this partnership was born from a very strong association with ILO. In fact, Mr. Ryder, here at the ILO, it was your Green Jobs program back in 2008 at the time of the financial crisis. As you remember, trillions of dollars were wiped off the stock markets when it collapsed. And there was a global Green New Deal in the sense of how do you jumpstart these economies again, and how do you create jobs along the way? That was the beginning of PAGE in some ways, because out of that green fiscal stimulus package, we realized we had a lot to offer to the international community. And I also recognize here Nikhil Seth, the head of UNITAR, because actually UNITAR was one of our first partners as well. UNITAR specializes in building capacity and training, and I'm sure Nikhil will tell you more about that. But what a natural partnership around jobs, the environment, and strengthening capacities to create prosperity without drawing down the resource base. So that is the origin of PAGE, and this morning I just wanted to give you 3 or 4 messages about how it evolved. Don't worry if your cell phone rings, that's fine, it's usually urgent. My wife will call twice if it's very urgent. So we have a couple of slides, and basically what I would like to say is, I guess I do this here. The active ingredient of PAGE is political commitment. It is policy ownership from the countries. It is not the UN. This is not a partnership about 5 UN agencies, even though that is what we're trying to create. It is a partnership about political commitment to underpin sustainability. It is owned by countries. It is driven by countries. And the addition that PAGE brings to it is merely some policy analytics. So in other words, around fiscal policy, around trade policy, industrial policy, labor policy, if the UN can add anything in this policy cycle that you all face, when I say you, I say countries out there, those of you who are part of the policy-making decision, it is to help inspire through your own actions, through this community of practice worldwide, to inform through these, as they say in Spanish, granitos de arena of policy advice, and of course that the policy framework enables investors to invest, for entrepreneurs to build, for those to create jobs and to create prosperity for the future. That is the mantra of PAGE: inspire, inform, and enable. And let me say that the inspiration for PAGE comes from you, the countries who are providing leadership in these areas. PAGE operates upstream. PAGE doesn't do everything. PAGE really focuses at that point in time when policies are made, because we know from experience, and for those of us who have worked in the banking community, as I myself have, for many years prior to joining the UN Environment Team, that investment decisions are framed by government policy. It is government policy which sets the stage for investments downstream. And every year, between 10 and 20% of global GDP is reinvested. That's between $7 and $14 trillion a year. We are talking sometimes about $100 billion for the Green Climate Fund, and every year between $7 and $14 trillion a year are invested. And on what basis of what decision? Well, it is these upstream decisions where exactly you and your policymaking community are framing the choices that will influence the downstream investments and actions by the private sector, which manages the bulk of the money. Of course, the bulk of the money is managed and catalyzed by the private sector. So that is the ethos of PAGE: work upstream, keep it light. PAGE has relatively small budgets, it has big aspirations, but we like to keep it light, and the active ingredient, as I said, is country ownership. It is political courage and ambition. Just a couple of photos here on that to complete the genealogy and this journey that we've embarked upon. 2013, it was conceived in Rio, plus 20. It was born in Nairobi 9 months later at the UN Governing Council. That's just a coincidence. On the podium you have Switzerland, Korea, Mexico, and many other countries. Actually, that is Doris Leuthard, who's actually now the president of Switzerland, who was there with us in Nairobi in 2013. The early supporters, and I have to say, and thank Korea particularly for the very early support to PAGE and their confidence in us. 2014 was a big year because UNDP joined PAGE. The 4 original founding partners, as you said, Mr. Ryder, UNDP joined. And when UNDP joins, that's a very big force, because that's the biggest UN program in many ways, with all the country offices around the world. And it's on the economics. And having UNDP, ILO, and UN Environment is really the triumvirate. Now, of course, industrial policy is also huge. And for many countries looking to diversify their economies, it's all about green industrial policy. 2016, last year at UNEA 2, I believe it was, and Mr. Solheim, one of your first outings, or I believe this was Achim Steiner's last outing, in fact, just around the turn of your new administration. We had the minister from South Africa, ministers from the UAE, from Korea, from the European Commission, Germany, celebrating the launch of the PAGE operational strategy, which is now online. And cut to 2017, Mr. Solheim, where you were in Berlin with the minister, and several other ministers, I must say, including a minister from Costa Rica, who is in this picture as well, who is the president of the UN Environment Assembly this year, Winnie Benyanya, the head of Oxfam International, and many, many other celebrities and dignitaries, helping us to take PAGE forward, and not in and of itself, but really to drive this agenda of sustainability forward. So, ladies and gentlemen, I did want to share with you a small feature of PAGE so that you could look under the hood, and that's our 2016 annual report, which is now online. It has the results that PAGE is delivering for your countries. For Mongolia, the first country to join PAGE. For Peru, the second country, which has now developed a green growth strategy, which is being implemented across the board and driving public investments. Please do have a look. It is at UN/PAGE website. I don't know if I have access to it here, but probably I don't have time anyway. Keep going. Merci.
There is the link also.
Oh, I see. There is a link down here. All right. Okay. Somebody more qualified than myself will have to look at this. I'm just an economist. But I do encourage you to have to look at the annual report, because it's very interesting about what countries are doing, not what PAGE is doing, not about what the UN is doing, what countries are doing. And with that, Mr. Chairperson, I send it back to you. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share a page with you this morning.
Thank you very much, Steve. This is the annual report that I'm holding up, and there will be copies available around the room after you leave if you wish to take a copy, and it's also on the website. We now get on to our panelists who will be making an input into the meeting, and the first panelist I would like to invite Mr. Eric Solheim, Executive Director of UN Environment, to take the floor.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Lee, and thank you everyone for joining this meeting. Sometimes paradoxes from real life speaks much more loudly than words from people like ourselves. And the Coal Museum in Kentucky in the United States of America very recently were looking around for new energy to electrify and provide better energy to the museum. What did they do? Well, they went solar. They decided to put solar energy into the Coal Museum in Kentucky in the United States. The week after, one of the big players in the coal industry in the same state of Kentucky, one of the big investors, also decided to make a new big investment in the era of Donald Trump, again in solar. Coal company investing in solar, not in coal. The one issue I get 9 out of 10 times from journalists this time is 3 words. It's just very simple. It says, "What about Trump?" And then I answer very simply, we all want to engage with the new government of the United States, want to be close to them, we want their global leadership, they are key to climate action, and for basically every global process, the United States of America, with China and a few others, are the most important countries on the planet. But when it comes to climate and environment, the impact of the White House is much less than people believe. Because the environment transformation of the United States of America is now mainly driven by the private sector, not by government. You may have seen that a couple of weeks back the stock exchange value of Tesla passed the stock exchange value of General Motors. A few weeks back before that it had also passed Ford. I mean, everyone knows that General Motors are making many more cars than Tesla. Tesla is basically hardly making cars. Tesla is making fewer cars than those getting into the streets of Beijing in a few months. So what is this about? It's the market's anticipation of the future. It's where investors see the United States going in the next years. They believe that in 5 to 10 years' time, Tesla will be more valuable than General Motors because of the competence, the leadership, the staff, and the ideas of Tesla. And I could give example after example. Google will be 100% renewable this year. The biggest brewery in the United States, those who make Budweiser, have decided to be 100% renewable very soon. Walmart, a huge supermarket chain, has decided that they will reduce emissions similar to 200 million cars. And they said, well, we are not doing it for the White House. We are doing it for our customers, for the benefit of the environment. And at the end of the day, because it's good for our company, it supports the economics of Walmart. So there is absolutely zero doubt that the direction now is the right one. Speed matters and we need to speed up, but direction is green. Let me move to a very different part of the world. Which I basically felt when going there, I saw the future. That was in the southern Indian state of Andhra Pradesh. They have a very dynamic chief minister. They have 11% economic growth, basically every nation in the world will envy them. And they're going green at a speed we have hardly seen everywhere in the world, not even in Germany. They are investing big in solar. They are opening the biggest singular solar plant in the world this month. But they're going solar in a wide way. They're investing enormously in LED lamps, and with Prime Minister Modi have reduced the price of LED lamps in India to 1/10 of what it was, because it matters that you make 200 million LED lamps rather than a few thousand LED lamps, then the price comes down. And this is also about South-South cooperation, because it's Chinese technology to a large extent brought to India by Indian companies and making southern India going green at a speed maybe China can do, but most of the rest of us have difficulties following that speed. But I could give example after example from all continents There is no issue about the direction. The price of solar cannot compete with the price of coal everywhere in the world for any new investment. There is no reason to stick to the old, and more government and business are embracing the new. So, on the matter, where are the jobs? The answer is very simple. The jobs are in the new, the jobs are in going green, and there is any number of jobs to be had there. We must get out of the old-fashioned idea that either you provide economic development or you provide for the environment. That's what they have avoided in India. They speak very rarely about climate in Andhra Pradesh. What they speak about is how to electrify the villages, how to provide green jobs, and how to provide prosperity for a poor state where still most people are very poor. That's their mission, but they do it by going. The jobs are in the green sectors. In the United States of America, there are presently 400,000 jobs in solar, 70,000 jobs in coal. Still, some politicians speak as if coal is the job creator. How can that be? How can we allow people to fool ourselves like that? So we're going in the right direction, and that direction is green. But there is a but. Even if there are many more jobs in the new green sectors, and this is about renewable energy, this is about transformation of the cities into mass transit system, reorganizing the cities in many different ways, making parks, making them green. There are any number of jobs here, any number of jobs in tourism. And tourism is very close to the environment. In the African continent where we are located, yes, there are beautiful beaches, there are fine restaurants, there are many jobs for tourists, but at the end of the day, most tourists come there because of the elephants, the lions, and the wildlife, which is amazing in Africa. And if that's not protected, we cannot go green. Let me give you just one example. In Rwanda, every singular gorilla is worth 1 million of tourist income for the nation of Rwanda. And of course that means that all the local people around the national parks are the first to defend the park. If we go there and try to shoot a gorilla, they will come up there very fast. I know they won't. And this is of course about protecting the environment, but it's about economic development at the same time. So this is why we need a full integration of our economic and environment agenda. Finally, there is a but. And the but I will illustrate with an example from my own country. I was for very long engaged in supporting the steel miners in northern Norway, in protecting one of the steel factories there, a place called Mo I Rana, for those of you who know Norway. And we tried to protect it, we tried to provide subsidies from the parliament, we did everything to protect the steel mines for the sake of the workers there. At the end, we failed. But it was the wrong idea, because there are more jobs now at the place of the steel mine, not in one big company, but in many different companies. The jobs are much cleaner, they are basically better paid, and the society which thought that they would go down the drain is thriving. So I was wrong in trying to protect the mine. Others said we can get the jobs in new areas. We're right. But there is a but. Because there is not necessarily exactly the same people who get the new jobs. It's not necessarily easy for a steel worker or a coal miner to be a nurse or a tourist guide or a solar or wind engineer. So we need to look into how we make that social transformation happen. There are more jobs in the green, but not necessarily for the same people. And we need, the main issue here is much better programs for re-education of people, for retraining. The time where people got an education in their 10s or 20s and then remained in the same job for the rest of their life is basically gone in most parts of the world. You will need for nearly all jobs to be able to retrain, and governments need to step up substantially, and private sector in that retraining to make the transformation to the green smoother. Because there are social costs which we need to look into, while the overall picture is very good and green.
Thank you, Mr. Solheim. I'm now going to hand the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Antje Liendertse, the Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Germany. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm just following up what was said in my three predecessors here on the panel. A few weeks after the second page ministerial conference in Berlin, we have here at today's event, maybe in the following weeks, also the opportunity to speak about the next steps. I mean, how to follow up on this conference. Let me first say that I wanted to extend a warm thank you to all page partners for having made the second page ministerial conference in Berlin such a success. And it's all about the remarkable cooperation between the UN agencies. You said it's about the states and the ownership of the states, but it's of course also because there is a kind of model of cooperation between the agencies that are putting the energy on one focus, and this focus then works and can thrive. So when we look back in Germany at the discussions in Berlin, we put ourselves the questions: what lessons have we learned now, and which challenges are identified, and what are the next steps? What is the follow-up? We think in Berlin that we are at an important moment in time because, of course, we have about 1.5 years after the adoption of the 2030 Agenda and the Paris Climate Agreement, an implementation challenge. I mean, there is inspiration, there is political will, and there is also a growing number of countries taking on board this ownership, you said, and joining the page cooperation. But there is also something that is very demanding for the economies themselves domestically, and you mentioned it. The countries are committed to have to a development path that will transform and modernize the economies, create stable and socially inclusive societies, and much better respect the boundaries of our planet. But we cannot do it without, having more international cooperation. And this is to put the third level on what you said. There is a cooperation between the relevant UN agencies, which is, triggering the projects and the cooperation. That there is the ownership of the states, but there is also some elements in international cooperation, also in the UN framework, depending on the states, that has to be followed up. So the first follow-up and the first next step is probably that page, it's obvious, should continue its policy advice as well as its outreach. And you mentioned, you pointed to the web page. There we will find many success stories, and success stories, also Mr. Solheim mentioned, are not the only ones, but they're also, every project of yours is also representing a success story. So we have to produce more success stories, make them available for the international community in order also to inspire other countries and other stakeholders, entrepreneurs, investors, trade unions, governments, for schools and universities and other non-state actors to participate in that long-term endeavor we have before us. So the first step would be after where we are now is page should continue its policy, and it's very promising to see the broadening of the Alliance of Green Economy champions across the different regions in reality of our words. The next step is probably the next conference, and I'm sitting here beside the South African colleagues. So in Berlin, the South African Environment Minister Edna Maleva announced the plan that her government will host the next page ministerial. So this will be also a very important preparation phase for this third page ministerial, and we intend to support, of course, and cooperate in the preparations of South Africa for this. The third follow-up every country can do, and we certainly do it, is using the fora where you are chairing or you are the presidency, and you can influence somehow the sustainability agenda in this forum. We took, of course, the current G20 presidency work program for this, and we made sustainability one of the pillars of our program. For example, we have a sustainability working group in the G20 format where we are discussing in detail what the G20 can contribute to foster to foster action on climate change and sustainable energy options. And we also not only counting on the states, but we're counting on the business 20, labor 20, civil 20, and think tank 20 groups that are giving input to this process. Let me mention a fourth point, follow-up point, fourth step one could do. This is very operative because we're currently preparing for the UN High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development in July in New York. So this HLPF and the HLPFs in the following years are a good opportunity and will help us to navigate towards the universal and timely achievement of the 2030 agenda, including the relevant parts of sustainability in the PAGE program. And I would also encourage PAGE to take an active role in the framework of the HLPF and to establish important synergies between its own work and the forum. Then the fifth, and I have only 6, so it's not going to be very long. So the fifth point is, Stephen mentioned that PAGE is owned by countries. So there is the follow-up in the countries themselves. Act nationally is an important follow-up. Germany adopted its first sustainable development strategy in 2002, and then we have regularly renewed it and updated it. The current German sustainability strategy, which includes measures for all 17 sustainable development goals, was adopted in January 2017 by the federal government, and I quote from Chancellor Merkel's foreword to this strategy: "Where there is a will, there is a way." But if you read it, you can really see that all the steps on every goal is very many line ministries in the federal government are affected by this strategy and have homework to do in the next 5-10 years. I mean, it's going until 2030, so in the next 14 years. So the homework you give to the line ministries does immediately imply that there has to be the government as at the president's or prime minister's office to be engaged in this process. And I know that with our national strategy, we're not alone. It is encouraging that more and more presidents and prime ministers' offices also in other countries, when it comes to the implementation of the SDGs, have an impact, because you need that. I mean, nationally and also internationally, you need this holistic support of the whole of the government. So the fifth step is, of course, just to bring about more presidents and prime ministers in the position where they can cooperate and see what is in for them in the PAGE projects, for example, PAGE support. And now I'm with my last step, the step 6. The next UN Sustainable Development Summit is scheduled for September 2019 in New York. We have to keep this in mind and, of course, start preparations early, also in the PAGE context. Germany certainly stands ready to give input and also to support others in preparing this summit. And with this, I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Leondertse. Unfortunately, the South African Ambassador Fakatu Diseko, is not able to be with us today, so in her stead is Councillor Nkombela, Mr. Liswe Nkombela. Thank you for joining us and standing in at short notice, and I wish to hand over to you, Councillor, for a statement on behalf of Ambassador Fakatu Diseko.
Thank you. Let me first thank the organizers for inviting South Africa to this event. And secondly, my ambassador would have loved to be present today. Unfortunately, she had to attend to other press matters. And I've been given a simple and straightforward job to read a statement. And that makes it easy for me. That whatever questions that will follow, I will just look at the statement and respond to them. And I'm also happy that there's also a colleague that's coming from the department that's directly involved in following up on PAGE. Hopefully that you will chip in whenever assistance is required. required from him. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I consider it a great honor and a privilege to address you at this session to explore mechanisms and approaches of achieving inclusive and sustainable economies in the context of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. This segment is convened close on the heels of the conclusion of the second Partnership for Action on Green Economy Ministerial Conference, which took place in March in Berlin, with focus on the themes of green investment, sustainable lifestyles, and inclusive growth. As the international community, we are confronted by multiple complex and interrelated socio-economic and environmental challenges of global proportions. These challenges provide a compelling reason for us all to rethink our economic system and adopt green, inclusive, and resilient growth and development trajectories. Therefore, we must reduce inequality within and among our countries, create the much-needed employment opportunities, and above all, end poverty, which remains the single best developmental challenge. Heads of state and government, when they adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development in September 2015, resolved, among others, to end poverty and hunger everywhere by 2030 and create conditions for sustainable, inclusive, and sustained economic growth, shared prosperity, and decent work for all, taking into account different levels of national development and capacities, and the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities. This will require all of us to develop the necessary public-private partnership, leverage our investment and infrastructure plans, reconfigure economic performance, as well as readjusting our lifestyle choices. It is therefore incumbent upon us to create conditions for equitable sharing of economic benefits and to support inclusive green growth through involvement and participation of our communities in technology development and transfer to enable developing countries to address the triple challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality, as well as other developmental challenges such as food and nutrition security, energy security, and climate change. In this regard, South Africa has put in place many programs and policy frameworks that promote resource efficiency, green transport, sustainable housing, and climate resilient agriculture to enable an environmentally sustainable and equitable transition to a low-carbon economy. To date, significant investment have already been made in different sectors, including the energy sector, which has witnessed a highly successful renewable energy procurement program to the value of 194 billion, and the government has advanced the National Green Fund of 1.1 billion to support investment projects, research and development, and capacity development initiatives across the various thematic areas of the green economy. The African Union has identified 4 key thematic areas through which greening the economy will contribute to sustainable development in Africa. These are inclusive growth and poverty eradication, employment creation, food security, and addressing resource scarcity and environmental risks. The AU further identifies 3 key pathways towards greening the economy in Africa: building on natural capital assets, green opportunities for industrial growth, creating enabling policies and institutions. Whereas there is a growing consensus and willingness on the part of many African countries to green their economies, a key challenge faced by many African governments and private sector actors is the lack of requisite capacities to do this. Transition to a green economy in all developing countries should thus be supported by a proper package of capacity building, technology transfer, and financial assistance. It is my sincere hope that this segment will reach consensus on a broad range of outcomes to mobilize the necessary resources, enable improved policy and coordination, strengthen dialogue, and deepen collaboration in green economy policy, planning and implementation to achieve inclusive and sustainable economies. That will be the conclusion of the statement, and I thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nkombela, for your statement. I now wish to hand over to our last speaker from the podium, Mr. Nikhil Seth, the Executive Director of the UN Institute for Training and Research. Mr. Seth, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vic. Let me start by saying good morning to this wonderful audience, acknowledge all these excellent panelists that we have on this side of the floor, and of course to thank the government of Germany for the brilliant Page Ministerial Conference that was held. I want to talk about four things that I feel are important in emphasizing the work that we've done in Page. And the starting point for what I want to say is rooted in history. And the fact, as Stephen Stone pointed out, that Page was born 5 years ago. It was born before the SDG agenda was established. And it was premised on the fact that the issues outlined in the Future We Want document, the 27 issues outlined in that document, were actually all interconnected. This realization, which filtered into the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, are sometimes treated as 17 discrete goals. But these are not discrete goals and discrete targets. They are an interconnected matrix of human aspirations, human concerns, especially on the environment, human concerns on peaceful and just societies, and human aspirations for economic growth, for decent jobs, for full employment, for social advancement, whatever. So understanding this interconnectedness was the big conceptual breakthrough in the 2030 Agenda. And it's prescient that Page, which came 3 years before the SDG Agenda, had already oriented its work to understanding that countries, actors in society, they're all wanting to define smart policies. And what are smart policies that countries want to define? These are policies which define the effort of governments, the effort of all actors in society, in fact, to meet human aspirations of their citizens. And that is how the Page approach of looking at the interconnectedness of issues was born. To respond to the requests from countries, which has been called the ownership of Page partners, as to what is it that they want to do to define smart policies. And that's how Page was born. And it's very important to remember that this is not only an example of good inter-UN system cooperation, where so many entities, 5 of them, have come together to bring sometimes what is called sectoral expertise to bear upon the cross-sectoral nature of the problems that societies and governments face in defining smart policy. So that was the first achievement of Page, of being prescient, of being able to anticipate that the SDG agenda would really concentrate on helping governments implement the response to the aspiration of their own people. Second, the financial model. You know, in the past, I'm a long-time UN staff member. I've done 2.5 decades in the United Nations. And often the criticism is thrown at the UN that it's a very stratified system, that it doesn't work together. And often what has been blamed is the financing model of the UN, where each organization, entity has to pursue its own funding based on the guidance given to it by its own governing systems. And that is often blamed. But look at this model. We have a combined funding model. Donors are extremely happy with it. We have programmatic work in countries, which shows the UN at its unified best, delivering in response to the requests that come to us from member states. So I just wanted to show how the model of PAGE, in bringing together the UN system through a different funding model, is actually delivering results. And as one of my program managers mentioned to me, we've been around 5 years and we still haven't fought with each other, so now this is something we are doing right. So these are the two basic points I wanted to bring up, that this is a successful model of response to country needs with a financing model that works. But let me now illustrate certain specific country examples where PAGE has been working to show how we have really performed. Let me start with a project in Jiangsu province of China, which has achieved outstanding success in identifying green indicators. Now, not only was it successful in this province, but 2 other provinces in China wanted to follow the same model. So we have 3 provinces in China basing themselves on the success of the model in the Jiangsu province and replicating that in their own provinces. So here we have scalability of something which we did in Jiangsu province. So we achieved something locally and globally. In Mongolia, one of our most advanced partner countries, PAGE, estimates that a 4% GDP investment into greening the economy could be enough to achieve major transformational change. Now, this kind of investment that Mongolia is pioneering will be, in what Guy Ryder said, increase the number of green jobs and inclusivity of Mongolian citizens. It will also result in a dramatic drop, 40% drop in GHG emissions for the period in which these investments are being made. So here's another example of how you're tackling the aspirations for jobs and the concerns about the environment and bringing it together in a model of learning and capacity building in Mongolia. This is a wonderful model, and I think what we need to do, not only from the countries who demand help from this kind of partnership, from the donors who are supporting this partnership, and of course from the collaboration within the UN system of making this happen at the country level. It's the time for implementation. We've gone way beyond the era of conceptualization. The idea of interdependence, for example, has been there for decades. It's not been the difficulty in understanding that things are linked. The problem is in operationalizing them, and here's where we've done something. What is UNITAR's role in helping operationalize all this? And I want to talk about that for a few minutes. The first and most important role of UNITAR, I see, is to change people's mindsets, because when we struggle in countries with these projects, it's often very difficult. It's easy to talk about bringing ministries together, to bringing academia and institutions together, to usher in change by greater cross-sectoral collaboration. But when you go down to work at that level, the major barrier is mindsets and how people have been doing these things in the past and how difficult they find it is to change, to become more smart in the way they look at these issues. They look at the trade-offs, look at the co-benefits, look at areas which will maximize the co-benefits, because after all the pot of investable resources is limited. And how do you define a smart policy which will maximize the co-benefits? So our role is in foundational learning on green economy to help our partners understand that by your finance ministries talking much more closely on these issues of greening with your finance industry in general, and with the ministries, the line ministries engaged in water and energy and food and industrialization, you will get much smarter policies at the end of the day. It's not turf competition and the type of issues which have prevented meaningful action of this nature in the past. That has to change with a certain set of learning in the kind of modeling where you show the co-benefits to people and the advantages of cooperation. So that's what UNITAR's role is, and we are very happy to be part of this PAGE partnership, and we'll continue to respond to requests. I understand that the requests that are coming to PAGE are increasing exponentially. Of course, we can't respond to every request we get, but this model, as it's worked in the past and as it will work in the future, I hope this will be a new model for reaching the SDGs and on making countries follow smarter policies, not only the governments, but all actors in these societies. Thank you, Vic.
Thank you, Mr. Seth. We've come to the end of our presentations from the podium. I'm a South African like Councillor Nkombela, and we have in our culture, and I'm sure it may be the same in many other cultures, that when it rains on an event, it says that that event has been blessed. And Mr. Ryder will remember that when we went to the funeral service in South Africa of the late Nelson Mandela, it poured with rain the whole day. And it was said in South Africa, we say that was a fitting way to the send-off for a great man in South Africa and in the world. So today's topic has been recognized as being extremely important because we've had rain bless the event. So we need to recognize that. So I'd like to have a round of applause for the rain that has fallen and also for our panelists. We now have some time to open the floor for comments or questions, and I'll allow the panelists to respond if necessary. And we have about 15 minutes for that. Before we hand over to Mr. Ryder for the wrap-up, we're going to see a 2-minute video. So, Steve, if you can be ready for that to show the video. There's a short 2-minute and 9-second video which we're going to show. And before we open the floor to everyone to make a statement, or anyone to make a statement, I'm going to ask the representative from the Switzerland government, Mr. Konig, to take the floor. And then he will be followed by Madam Somerset from the Norwegian government. So first, Mr. Konig, if you can perhaps identify yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Distinguished panelists, representatives, I'd like to show you a small example from Switzerland that may contribute to the overarching contribution to green economy and the engagement of the governments in the whole process. More than 70% of Switzerland's environmental impacts are caused abroad, since Switzerland imports much of its raw materials and goods. At the national level, already in 2013, our government has adopted a Green Economy Action Plan. At the international level, our engagement led us to support and steer activities such as the Green Growth Knowledge Platform, the 10 years framework of programs on sustainable consumption and production, and of course the Partnership for Action on Green Economy, which we have been supporting over the last few years. Personally, being the national focal point for the UN Environment Programme, but also at the same time being engaged in the process of achieving the SDGs in Switzerland, I'm particularly pleased to see activities that are engaging all different actors in strengthening the environmental dimension in the SDGs. One particular example stems certainly from the Batumi Initiative on Green Economy that was adopted last year at the 8th Ministerial Conference, Environment for Europe, in Batumi, Georgia. As you know, Big E consists of voluntary commitments by countries and organizations alike to operationalize the strategic framework on greening the economy. 115 commitments were submitted by 24 countries and 12 organizations. The initiative remains open. One of the actions announced by Switzerland is the network called RefNet. It's a network of experts offering advice to companies, particularly small and medium enterprises, to increase their material and energy efficiency and therefore reduce their costs in environmental impacts throughout their value chain. Enterprises can get targeted advice and audits. Since its creation in 2014, 184 enterprises have got advice. 55 enterprises have adopted concrete measures, resulting in accumulated economic savings of about 50 million per year. This is just one small example that stems from Switzerland that can engage all different actors that are needed to strengthen the environmental dimension of the SDGs. Switzerland will be committed at the national level and also at the international level to continue those activities. And myself, I'm particularly pleased that there are a multitude of activities that are aimed at strengthening the environmental dimensions. in the SDGs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Koenig. Madam Somerset, to my left, thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairperson. And let me also thank all the panelists for very inspiring introductions. I want to start by saying that my government, the government of Norway, has actually learned a lot from the inclusive and adaptable approach of PAGE. We detect a very strong sense of common direction across countries and across the UN organizations. Allow me to recall how the UN environment and the ILO were early movers of green opportunity. Very soon after the financial crisis in 2008, they jointly formulated the notion of green jobs. By sharing such insights, they actually presented us with a different vision of development, one with a wider concept of wealth. They were clearly ahead of their time. PAGE not only shows partner countries the growth opportunities in renewables, forests, or waste sectors. An equally important message is that a green and inclusive economy is part of the solution to all other aspirations, like health, for instance, or lasting poverty eradication, social inclusion, etc. Mutual learning will be a big part of the SDGs and Paris' success. And countries not only need support and dialogue on what to do in terms of policies, we also need dialogue on how to agree on these policies nationally. And the PAGE Partnership for Action helps countries to do that, helps strengthening governments. So finally, let me just reiterate and underline that the Norwegian government very much value being the partner of PAGE now and also in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to open the floor for comments. And if you could please introduce yourself, because we don't have name tags in each seating place, and also to raise your hand if you wish to take the floor. I have one request for the floor. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
My name is Deep Ford, and I'm the ambassador of Guyana to UNOG and to WTO. It's a pleasure to be here this morning and to listen to the panelists. I must say their presentations are in keeping with the mantra of PAGE, inspiring and informing. I also thank PAGE for their work and their contribution in their short lifespan to the many countries, not only the partner countries, that they have already affected in major ways. Guyana's commitment to a green economy is increasingly well known, and I assure you is being vigorously pursued. I think I'm correct in saying that at the recent second ministerial conference, Guyana became the 13th partner of the PAGE family, if I call it that. We recognize that there are countries more advanced than us in this regard, and we hope to learn and benefit from their experience. Guyana has given to the world a large section of rainforest that is well known and supported by the government of Norway, importantly, referred to as Irokrama. And we are hoping to contribute even a larger area. Another area is under consideration. I want to take the opportunity not to underline Guyana's particular commitment in this regard. We've just recently developed with UNDP's assistance a framework for the green economy, and our budget for 2016 was entitled Towards the Development of a Green Economy. I would rather use my time to bring to the attention of the leaders in this regard some of the challenges that we would like perhaps increased and deepened the tension towards. And there are 3 points that I'd like to make. The first I would call the nature of transition challenges. We have what I might call the normal transition challenge, which is from the tension between what might be the brown interests versus the green interests. And we know that in many countries, their ability to put in place green policies is sometimes hindered by the brown influence, if I call it that, within those economies, and the need to assist countries to manage that. A second dimension of that transition challenge is the green economy commitment versus the brown economy opportunity. And Guyana, particularly at this moment in its history, faces this particular challenge. We have a windfall gain in front of us with the discovery of oil. Yet we are simultaneously committed to a 100% renewable economy. How do we balance this? How do we manage this trade-off? How do we use this windfall gain simultaneously as we maintain and continue to pursue the green economy? That's my first challenge and, to some extent, request for attention in helping us in this regard. Secondly, and this has actually been mentioned by 2 of the panelists, my colleague from Germany and our Mr. Seth, the interconnected matrix of influence on how successful we are in achieving our goals in the green economy. We say that this must be located, the initiative, the coordination, must be located in perhaps the most important place within the institutional framework in our countries, the President or the Prime Minister's office. This has been done, as I understand it, in most of our countries, but it still does not work very effectively. We still need greater analytical work and on studying the interinstitutional flows of information, management of information, and use of information. We need the line ministries to be schooled to a greater extent in how they can work better together to make the gains that we would like to achieve. And thirdly and finally, I would like to put on the table firmly the question of fuel efficiency. Whatever the fuel, it is good to move towards a green economy, but we must also be speaking equally as we might in the brown economy about efficiency of the use of resources and of energy within the green economy. And finally, I will close by saying that the message that I hear is very much towards a green economy. To some extent, I think that I work closely with a little bit of a different message. Not only towards a green economy, but from a brown to a green economy. Because that tension and that trade-off is still very, very much with us and maybe be with us for a long time. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ambassador Ford. And now the gentleman 3 rows back.
I'm Uday Seneviratna, Secretary, Minister of Environment of Sri Lanka. My minister is the president of our country, so therefore we give a highest priority for environment subject in our country. Our government initiated blue-green economic era last year, 2016. Under that concept, government initiated few actions. One is the promote environmental friendly green smart village throughout our country. under that, we are trying to develop 10,000 villages during next 5 years. That will be environmental friendly villages. In addition, government take a very firm decision last year. Since 2017, all the government buildings must be green building. So that will promote the other sectors to follow this concept. All the buildings must be green building. In addition, government is very much interested to promote renewable energy. As a tropical country, now we are promoting solar, wind power and biomass energy for our energy requirement. So there are few forces promote solar, other brown energy, but government took a very firm decision to promote renewable energy. In addition, government took very broad decision to grow our forest. Now our forest cover is 20%, 27%. We want to promote up to 32% of our forest cover. So those are some of the broad initiatives government took recently, and in addition, we are facing a huge challenge in some of the areas, especially waste management. Very recently, we had a very tragic incident in Colombo. So therefore, we are looking for assistance to manage our garbage. Now, under this blue-green economic initiatives, we are looking for UNEP assistance to do a scoping study very near future to get to formalize our concept. So we are happy to collaborate with PAGE program in future, and we want to promote our country as a green economic country, because Sri Lanka is one of the most highest biodiversity country in the region. So therefore, we are happy to collaborate with PAGE program in future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lafid. Any one last opportunity? We have one hand, the gentleman here, and then we're going to go to the next step of the proceedings. The floor is yours.
Merci, Monsieur le Modérateur. Je suis Faisal Suissi de la mission permanente du Maroc. Je voudrais remercier tous les panélistes pour leur brillant exposé et saisir l'opportunité de la présence avec nous de l'ambassadeur de l'Allemagne. C'est une opportunité précieuse et très unique d'avoir l'ambassadeur de l'Allemagne, aussi présidente du G20. Et le G20, je pense, c'est l'originalité de cette réunion, car les Nations Unies, elle a besoin d'une interaction avec le G20. Les Nations Unies sans le G20, je crois, c'est pas aussi complémentaire. Et c'est la raison pour laquelle mon interrogation, elle a deux axes principaux. Une évaluation des relations du G20 avec les Nations Unies. Donc comment, Madame l'ambassadeur, pourriez-vous évaluer l'étendue et l'ampleur des interactions du G20 avec les Nations Unies en matière des objectifs du développement durable? Donc c'est un secteur précis en matière de la mise en œuvre des objectifs du développement durable, car maintenant il faut mettre en œuvre, c'est-à-dire nous affrontons le défi, comment pourrait-on mettre en œuvre les objectifs du développement durable 2015-2030? Donc comment évaluer l'étendue et l'ampleur de cette interaction entre le G20 et les Nations Unies en matière des ODD? Et ma deuxième question, comment vous pronostiquez l'avenir du G20 avec les Nations Unies en matière des objectifs du développement durable. Comment vous voyez l'avenir des interactions entre le G20 et les Nations Unies en matière de mise en œuvre des objectifs du développement durable? Et je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, representative from the government of Morocco. We're now going to have a look at the video, which is a 2-minute video on page, which I hope you'll find interesting. So I'm going to ask the technicians to just link us up. It's important that you use your headsets to hear the audio of the video, so please link up on the headsets.
Green growth is the future. By the way, there is no other future. This is the only future we can have if we do it green, inclusive, and we have growth, because we need all three of them. The world asks the very old-fashioned question, can you be green and can you be prosperous at the same time? I suggest a one-word answer, Germany.
The global community as a whole is increasingly recognizing that climate action and sustainability represent a very fruitful modernization program for national economies.
We have seen water, soil,
reducing poverty.
We're going to solve or address several issues.
Dialogues, we have to talk to the governments.
Doing the right thing as soon as we can.
Private sector's goodwill to move. You would have pockets of excellence.
We need to get corporations out of the thinking that they are only there for the purpose of shareholders.
We want to train our employees.
Growing population is living in cities.
Climate change is real. It is affecting people. We have come here to learn.
Creating also more sustainable lifestyles.
Turned on its head an entire system.
They have the agency to affect positive change in the world around them.
If you empower women, you empower the whole nation.
Doesn't allow us as Africans to grow.
Some of the problems of our world is materialization of our economy.
Forces behind this green revolution are so strong, politically and technologically. We will do it, but we need to do it faster.
Thank you very much for the... we're not going to do a repeat. Thank you very much for that video, and you can see it was a very successful conference and a very diverse and important debate that took place. I'm now going to hand over to Mr. Ryder to do the wrap-up, and then we will end the meeting there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vic, and thank you for the skillful way you've put this meeting together and handled it. You've even made us feel happy about it being a very wet day today. It's raining, but even that can be turned to our advantage, so well done. All things are possible. Let me say this has been an extraordinarily encouraging event this morning. I want to thank everybody who's contributed to it in different ways. It's unusual, I think, to find such a strong community of thinking about the challenges that we have discussed this morning. And also, I think, the appreciation that we all have and aspirations that we all have for Page as a key locomotive to continue to move us forward on these challenges. Look, I just want to pick out 3 or 4 strong messages which I take as being important from the conversation this morning. The first is that we have to treat this with care. I think there is a general understanding that there is a decisive movement in the world, I say it in the most general terms, that the future has to be sustainable, that the future is green jobs, as you said, Eric. To quote the Secretary General, he's got a nice little quote in the annual report of Page, which you should all look at. He says, it's clear now that it's good business to invest in the green economy. We've had that message underlined. So it all looks pretty easy, doesn't it? But not really. This is a trickier process than the generalities might lead one to believe. Because granularity of the specific situations which member states and communities are dealing with. We realise that we have significant challenges to meet. Eric, you've emphasised that the market is giving the right signals, that investors are seeing the right thing to do is to move into the green economy. But I think it would be a mistake to believe that we should just leave this process to the market and take our hands off it. There are challenges in the process of transition. In the ILO, we talk about just transition to a sustainable future. You've mentioned that particular case you had to deal with in the north of Norway, where people felt they were going to lose their jobs. I've had a very similar experience in a previous life, talking to coal miners in Silesia in Poland, whose mine was about to close and whose community was about to die, as they saw it, because of the sorts of process that we're talking about. These are not imaginary problems. They're not egotistical problems. They are issues that we have to deal with as we move forward. This is where I think going from the general to the specific, from the abstract to the concrete, sorts of issues that the Ambassador of Guyana was putting before us. This is what we have to do, and this is where I think PAGE, because it is very concrete, it is very hands-on, it is very nationally owned, as has been emphasised, has very particular importance. In that context, and I think Mr. Sethi said this in the best possible way, mindsets matter. The way people think really matters. And that applies at all levels. It applies internationally, it applies nationally. I think we're all conscious of the imperative, Ambassador, for all of us in the international system to work better together. But we've also been reminded that in national government as well, this can also be a challenge. Different line ministries coming together, joining up the dots. So we all face that challenge of the mindset. Now, in this regard, I think, obviously, the Paris outcome of the 2030 agenda, to speak more broadly, has been tremendously helpful because it is that integrated, interconnected agenda that has been talked about. I hope it's integrated and integrating because it forces us to come together in delivery. When, Eric, I think we can say this, we were with the Secretary General last week at the Chief Executive Board of the UN. He was pushing us, he was challenging us to find ways to deliver together on the 2030 agenda in a manner which requires us to get out of old ways of thinking, frankly, to re-engineer the system within which we work, to deliver this integrated agenda in an integrated fashion. And I think we're going to continue to work on that, and PAGE is one instrument that we have in our hands. Now, in that regard, resourcing is a tremendously potent instrument. I don't want to descend into sort of mundanity here, but the way funding is made available to the international system, depending on how it's done, can actually unwittingly reinforce institutional silos and help to break them down. I think PAGE is a very good example, as has been said, of how it can help to bring us together. Now, exaltation for cooperation is one thing. When it's backed up by the types of funding practices that I don't say oblige us, but certainly incentivize our cooperation, then we're certainly moving in the right direction. And I also believe this is the way to move forward. Ambassador, you've reminded us of the institutional steps, those 6 steps that you pointed to, and some questions have been asked about that as well. Perhaps we'll have to try and answer them outside the room. I think it is really important that we see PAGE and the specifics of PAGE in this broader institutional setting that we have, be it in the lead up to the next PAGE ministerial, we look very much forward to being in South Africa, or to the HLBF in July. We have to use all of these things, and we have to be coherent. What we're trying to achieve in PAGE, we have to take into the broader international and interinstitutional arena. And my final point is, all these things sound great in a meeting room in Geneva. They really have to be worked out on the ground in your countries, in your communities. That is why this emphasis on national ownership is so important, why the lightness of the process in PAGE really matters. We are enabling, we are inspiring, we are it's been a tremendously encouraging and thought-provoking event this morning. My one thought is this is a story that needs to get bigger, to be heard more, to make the changes happen at a greater scale than those we're achieving at the moment. Page is a relatively new initiative. It needs to grow. We need to make it grow. And one way we can do that is to advertise and to speak out very clearly about what we've achieved and what we intend to achieve in the future. So thanks to all of you for taking us in that direction. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you very much, our interpreters. Thank you for everyone who organised, and thank you for being here. If you want to have a good cup of coffee, enjoy the rain as well. There's just around the corner, there's a coffee shop, there's a lounge, you can network. Thank you very much.